At LinkedIn, we know hiring is a big deal for your small business. Sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. LinkedIn uses data that you can't find anywhere else to give you the best candidates, all so you can feel confident you're hiring the best person for the job. And even a little hiring bliss. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
To realize the future America needs, we understand what's needed from us. To face each threat head on. We've earned our place in the fight for our nation's future. We are Marines. We were made for this.
This episode is brought to you by FedEx. FedEx knows running a small business is hard enough without the hassle of shipping. That's why there's FedEx One Rate. With FedEx One Rate, you can ship your holiday packages cheaper than the post office for as low as $14.50 for small boxes. Visit FedEx.com/OneRate for details. Exclusions apply. Valid through January 19th, 2025. FedEx One Rate. 2-day retail shipping, one flat rate.
So much of baby, so much.
You good.
Will be coming during our podcast, but well, not inside here, but you'll probably hear her coming, so don't be alarmed.
Sure.
Okay.
It's okay, I'm sharing them.
Yes, I have a lot of different ones. Okay, so this is YouTube. Okay. This is Spotify, Apple, and Pandora. That's Facebook, Bigo, Tagged, and Fanbase.
Oh my God, you're so hooked up. I don't even know what half those platforms are. I'm old-fashioned. I have Facebook and Instagram.
See, I'm trying to transition from Facebook and Instagram.
To what?
To
all these other platforms.
Fanbase. And I'm usually on these other ones as well. But imagine all of those other ones, including Facebook, and so this one's Facebook, and including like TikTok and Instagram, which I'm usually in.
So I tried Twitter and I have a Twitter account, but like I have no friends. I barely follow anyone. I forget to even post on there. TikTok is something I'd like to get into, but I have no idea.
See, if you never download it, you won't be able to.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, because one of my friends, her son has a huge following on a lot of these platforms. Did you ever hear about the Black Times Ty Baker? He was one of the protesters that was arrested during 2020. He's a photojournalist, and so he has a TikTok account and does a lot of really awesome educational videos on current events. And so she had me download it so I could watch his stuff, but I don't really know how to use it.
Right. So wow. Oh yes, you do, because you will be a big success on there. And you know they're actually selling phones for up to $50,000 right now with TikTok installed.
Are you kidding me?
I'm serious. I just showed my best friend, like literally the highest one right now is 50. I think it might be higher than that.
So tell me more about that. So basically, if you didn't download it, you just can no longer download a movie. Why?
Yes. Because it's technically when they banned it, and they brought it back, they didn't bring it back to like that. To the apps, to where like they said, if you have it still installed, then you can still use it. But if it's not installed, then you're tough luck. Which I deleted it immediately when they said it was gone. I was like, bye. You're not gonna make me feel like you got something over me. And just give it to me when you want. And you know, I just felt like that was just more to it than the eye means.
That you needed to deal with.
Yeah. Yes, so
You live and
welcome
you
to
learn.
the couch. Yes, welcome to the couch, everybody. This is Sara, Bana. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
I love you.
Yes, I love you
Thank
too,
you
girl.
so
I've been
much
watching
for
you.
inviting me.
No problem. I'm super excited to have you. My girl Connie. Shout out to Connie Johnson because I just texted her today. I'm like, yeah, you make sure you tune in. She was like, oh, well, that's my girl. I'm like, that's my girl.
Senator Connie Johnson, mother of criminal justice
Yes.
reform, one of my mentors. She's embraced me since I was younger, and so I just graceful, one of the most graceful women I've ever come across.
Wow. You
so,
said since you were younger, you still look young.
Thank you. I'm 40, you all, almost 40.
What?
So, yeah.
Girl, you
Yeah.
look damn
Well,
good.
thank you.
Look it
Thank
up.
you.
Hot shit. Now, you weren't always able to vote till about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What made you to finally being able to vote to running for Oklahoma County Commissioner, District 1?
So I am an immigrant to this country. I moved here with my mom and my sister originally. It took my dad another nearly 7 years before he was able to make it over. And so when my mom became a naturalized citizen, and for what many people don't understand, the line to immigration is very long. And even though we had legal status, temporary status upon entry, it literally took years before we were granted what they call a green card, which is a temporary legal status, which allows you to get employment, allows you to get a driver's license. It took nearly about another 6-8 years before my mom became a citizen. And at that time, I was already over the age of 18, which required me to go through the citizenship process separately than from my sister and my mom. And so it wasn't until approximately 10 years ago or so before I had obtained the right to vote, because if you're not naturalized citizen or you weren't born here, you don't automatically have the right to vote.
Right.
And that's the reality for so many people. Aside from undocumented folks, it's also the same situation for a lot of folks with prior felony charges on their record. And so I know firsthand what it means to be what I call a third-class citizen, because not only did I not have the right to vote, but I'm also a woman who's a minority, and we all know how that goes for us in this state. And so I think it's really unfortunate that we deprive so many people from just a simple basic right to participate and have a voice in our representative democracy.
Wow. Now, do you have dual citizenship?
No, I don't. No. Just I'm here. Yeah, and that was the other ugly thing about it is like my parents were political asylees to this country, so I literally had no home country. I had no protection from any country. You know what I'm saying? And so there was this identity crisis of not belonging anywhere, not even having a passport, you know, and so when I became naturalized, that was a really personal, emotional experience for me, particularly for someone like me whose life has literally been radically impacted by politics, right? I was born towards the end of the Iran-Iraq war. I remember bombers going overhead and bombings happening, people dying. I remember the post-war effect, right, of the lack of resources and goods, right, and people having to stand in long lines to get just the basic home goods that they needed to survive. And believe it or not, at that time, Saddam Hussein, who attacked Iran over oil, was actually being supported by the United States and actually used sarin gas, which is, weapons of chemical war and banned across the world. And so I experienced that. And so as a very young age, being born in the middle of that, and then also getting old enough to recognize the revolution that had taken place and how my immediate family was impacted and their lives were in danger, their economics were in danger, their political ability to protect themselves and represent themselves was in danger. You literally are growing up at 3-4 years old with this real awareness of politics and just existence, right? And how politics, impacts your existence. And so politics was something I was always interested in. Like how 7-year-olds are watching cartoons. I was hanging out with my grandpa watching CNN or PBS.
Right.
And a lot of this stuff was like in Iran when I was a little kid. you weren't allowed to, the media, the TV is censored. There was like 3-4 channels, and there were state-ran media. So my grandpa would have to go through extreme channels in order to access, world news, in order to get the truth about what's really happening, right? And so I remember like running around listening and fine-tuning into that. And then when I moved here, obviously I was aware, around 16 years old, I started getting politically engaged, working on political campaigns, working on issues that impact our communities, with programs that educate young people about our politics, our procedures, our institutions. So being that person and then not being able to vote until like you're 30, it's just, it was kind of hard. It was hard on me. Most people, maybe they wouldn't care, but someone like me, it was,
it was huge,
yeah.
Because you were already into the political field,
Yes, yeah.
And it's like, damn, I'm doing so much for the political field. Why can't I vote?
Yeah. But here's the beautiful thing, and I hope this inspires people, and I hope this inspires people who have struggles when it comes to political stuff, whether it's not having the right to vote these days, currently, is if a person like me can go from not even having the right to vote, not even having the right to be here, right, to have that full protection as an American citizen, and within such a short time frame, I've been able to be a public servant in the capacity of a councilwoman, and to today be a candidate for county commissioner. Should one inspire us about the country that we live in, and that it is still tangible for us to make those movements, but that it can also be possible for other individuals. Now we have to change some laws, right? We have to become more inclusive, but the fight is there, and it takes all of us to make this a reality for anyone and everyone that's interested, right?
Exactly. Now you stated a few minutes ago that, dealing with, you seeing missiles and planes and all of this. What did that do to your mental health?
I was young enough where I didn't really understand the reality of war until I literally was confronted by it. I mean, I heard my adults around me talking about it, the Iraqis, they're coming. And you have to understand, at this point, my grandpa had a few properties, and there was one incident that I remember very clearly, because I wasn't centrally located in the country. I was on the border where all the oil fields were, and that's where the Iraqis and Saddam were attacking that region. And I literally recall, the sirens going off, news, coming on that, they're coming. I remember my mom was hiding in the closet. My courageous, wild, crazy grandmother, who feared nothing, is running barefoot in the backyard looking at these bomber planes that are flying extremely low. And I'm, of course, chasing after her, screaming at them, you bastards, you're killing people, how dare you, don't you have mothers, don't you have sisters? And I don't know how she didn't get bombed. But it was, I mean, seriously, to think back about, you're a child, you don't realize what's happening, but when I think back about it, of her courage and, the fact that she wasn't attacked that day.
And she was even speaking out.
Yeah, it just, as a woman, particularly in that area, was just, I kind of think I took a little bit after my grandma when it comes to that stuff, because my mom is much more timid. She, and she's back in the closet screaming, we're dying, freaking out. And I recall that day, shortly after my uncles came, and I guess they had dropped some bombs in the town next door. And I remember him having us get in a truck. He didn't want to leave us behind, but he had us get in a truck to go there to see if we could help. And I just remember seeing just the buildings had just been demolished, and there were bodies and people screaming. And my uncle wanted to help, but then he recognized it was really traumatic on me, and my mom was going crazy. And he's like, I need to get the women home, and then I'll try to come back and see what I can do. So it wasn't until that direct experience that I really understood what war actually meant. And I recall post that experience, I mean, I think until about the age of being 10, 11, 12, I had this fear of Iraqi soldiers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I contributed to the Iraqi soldiers because that was my direct experience, right? So, and I share that to say it was a limited perspective, right? If the Iraqi soldiers come, it's dangerous, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is it doesn't matter who is coming or what uniform they're in. You know, the impact of war is real, and the psychological trauma, and you know, I'm lucky to have made it out, and we live in an era, you know, the war is ongoing across the world, and we don't talk about it enough, you know, and there are children, there are human beings that are suffering as a result of it. So.
Yeah. Wow, and you know, to go through that at a young age, and I mean, I don't know if you still have maybe flashbacks about it.
I don't honestly have flashbacks in the form of like PTSD or anything, but I recall it, you know, and it's hard for me to think about those images that I have in my head for too long. It makes me sad, it makes me want to cry. It takes me to a vulnerable place psychologically and mentally. But I don't know, maybe it was because I was young enough and I didn't really have a deep understanding of what it was exactly I was seeing, that maybe it didn't have that type of an effect on me. On my mother, it's a totally different effect, you know, and I think that it has caused her long-term, you know, trauma as a result of it. So, but my mom's had a real rough life. You know, she was around for the revolution. I mean, she's just seen so much happen. Her sense of security in the world around her is a lot less than I would say what I feel on a day-to-day basis. So.
Wow. If you guys are just now tuning in, it's the Couch Chronicles, where it ain't no fucking limits. I got Sara Bana on the couch. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get it started. I know we've been talking already, and you're probably like, wait a minute, but you already... Yeah, we didn't do the intro, so let me go ahead and give you the intro, and we're going to finish up.
It's time for the Couch Chronicles, where there ain't no fucking limits.
Every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from 8 Central Time. You don't never want to miss a couch. And now we live every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Central Time. So that's the couch every day of the week. Yeah, tune in. You don't want to miss this shit.
Period.
It's the Couch Chronicles, where they know what? I know you said it.
Y'all, Sara Bana on all social media. Make sure that you follow her and support her campaign. We're going to keep on going. I was going to play a song, but we ain't going to do that. I'm going to play it later. I got y'all, because we on the couch again later with another guest tonight. Now, you're a big advocate for DHS and the corruption and deaths in the Oklahoma County Jail.
Yeah.
And a lot more. What inspired the advocate in you?
So going back again to the whole civic engagement when I was young, at that point I was really interested in our institutions, watching government in practice up close. And I recall being at the state capitol building one day. I was helping a young man who was 16, had been struck by a vehicle, had lost vision. The driver had gotten away, and I was actually taking him to go meet some of the lawmakers up there to share his experience of how we could enhance laws to be make sure we have better protections, particularly on how police respond and accountability. And I met Milton Combs Jr. And I don't know who knows him, but a lot of people do, right?
Yeah.
He's another one of my mentors. Milton's an old-time civil rights leader. He's from California, worked with the Black Panthers, you know, just has seen history in America, right? And we run into each other at the Capitol, and, you know, he gives me a hard time and goes, "You want to help people? Let me take you some places." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll go." And we literally connect, and he started taking me to some of the most marginalized, neglected parts of our city, in Oklahoma City, and confronted me with children and families that were literally suffering, and what I would say were comparable to the third world conditions that I had experienced in the Middle East. And for me, that was something I could relate to, right? So he took me out of the fancy hallways of the state capitol building and these government institutions that are just enormous, and then he took me, you know, to the brunt of the reality of the folks that are suffering. And so I began working with him. He taught me about civil rights work, and so we began helping people. We literally, as a team, whether it was housing issues, whether it was violence issues, whether it was police use of force incidences. And through him, I met leaders with the NAACP, you know, leaders in all arenas of organizations and issues that work on civil and human rights work. And so that's kind of been my interest, you know, and being able to literally, and I don't know, I had this conversation with Dr. Henderson the other night. He's a huge civil rights icon here in the state, and I would argue nationally. And he also had a lot of suffering in his background. And I asked him, I said, do you think it requires one to kind of have some level of suffering in order to be interested in this type of work? And we both really didn't know the answer, but we just know, I know for me, that helped me relate to the suffering of other people. So their suffering was something that I literally, physically, emotionally felt, and I had this dire need, you know, to provide services and protect them the way I would want to be protected, you know, and empowered, if you will.
Yes, wow. Now, you promote supporting upcoming businesses and mom and pop businesses.
Yes.
What are some of your favorite mom and pop businesses that you support?
I have lots of them in the Mid-Dell community. Ted's Wings, I don't know if you all know where that is, off of Northeast 10th Street. I can't name them off the top of my head, but I like local cafes. I love discovering them. I love randomly just walking into a small mom and pop shop and figuring out what they're up to, and you find incredible food. I'm a foodie. I'm a food person. I like to eat, y'all.
Oh, I do too. I'm vegan though, but I do love to eat.
So you're healthy. I need to get on this vegetarian vegan diet because a lot of meat is not really good for you. But I love discovering local businesses, and one of the things, and I'm all about, sorry, you're fine, all about economic development, and we need big companies, but one of the things that I see systematically as a matter of practice is too much of our tax dollars are being funneled to support companies and corporations, and unfortunately I do not see as a matter of practice that type of level of governmental support being given to small mom and pop shops, right? And so I'd like to see some equity there.
Yes.
And more importantly, I would like to see young people being educated about business ownership, right? Like, for example, in my community, you have lots of young kids who are mowing grass to help their moms make ends meet, right? And they have like 5 to 15 yards that they, you know, mow weekly or whatever. And so I have this concept of why couldn't, for example, the Chamber of Commerce in the city create a program where we're teaching them how to apply for an LLC, to establish a business, get a bank account, right, register with the Secretary of State, and then why aren't we teaching them how to put in bids, for example, for some of the contracts all of our municipalities have, right? Because I can almost guarantee you those kids who live in our community, who are working because they literally have to make ends meet, would probably provide those services, better quality of services, I would argue, for much cheaper. And so taxpayers could save money, but we're also promoting homegrown business opportunities, and we're tapping into young people, right? Food truck industry is another area. There's so many different ways to enter into the business field, and it doesn't have to be huge and giant to begin with, but we start small. But we've got to teach, right, and equip and empower our communities to be able to do that, right? Because we don't have generational wealth, right? We don't have a dad or a grandpa who built a industry and said, oh, here's the keys to the industry, right? And so we need resources and individuals that are willing to contribute to our ability to start off.
Right, you know? That's real. And I promote, you know, supporting upcoming businesses, black-owned businesses, felon-owned businesses, you know, because a lot of us, we get out and it's hard for us to find a job, so we have to make a job for ourselves, like hence my podcast, you know. I LLC'd it, this is my job, you know. Making music, that's my job, so, you know, and I take it serious, so, you know, when we support upcoming businesses, it not only, you know, it feels good, and you not just helping some big old corporation that you don't even know. Get to know your community.
And we're going to hold corporations accountable, right?
Yeah.
Like companies like Amazon who are operating in our backyard and have some of the horrific working conditions, or, you know, not paying people right, and people are struggling to make ends meet, right? And so if we're going to invest our tax dollars in corporations, there's got to be a return for the people who are funding them, as in you and I, the taxpayers, right? But we really got to uplift regular people into business ownership, because it can really help us transition and achieve higher socioeconomics. But we need some resources and some know-how and some training, if you will, in order for our kids to be able to make that transition happen.
Right. That's so real. Now, you've done a lot of protesting, standing on the front line.
Yeah, I'm a professional protester.
Period.
I like the First Amendment, y'all, and I like to utilize it anytime that I can. And that's the other thing about being an immigrant. Where I come from, if you protest, they may hang you in the town square.
Right.
You know?
And that's why actually the rest of the question is, did you ever fear backlash? And, you know, what helped you stand on the decision of going through with, you know, being on the front line?
Yeah. So for me, I don't always try to start out on the front line, and people have this misconception, I love to protest, but, I don't need to do it if we can negotiate, and our government institutions can be equitable, fair, just, ethical, moral, right? And operate in a fashion that is serving the public interest, right? But unfortunately, our government is as good as the people who who are elected and who represent us.
That's true.
And then, unfortunately, there are individuals who aren't there performing their duties in the interest of the public, but rather oftentimes causing harm, right, to the public. And so, if having meetings and showing them statistics and information doesn't work, if advocacy doesn't work, if offering them alternative approaches doesn't work, if they're literally just being bullies and their policy making and their actions are causing harm to our rights as human beings, if they're resulting in people unnecessarily dying or people having their rights infringed upon, and there is no respect, then at that point I do think protest is necessary. It's just one of the many peaceful avenues. So my theory is any and every peaceful avenue available within our democracy to protect human rights, to protect civil rights. And so you got to be strategic and see what works, right? Sometimes it's through the legislative office, sometimes it's through the courthouse and filing litigation, right? And sometimes it's through the street. And so people power matters. Our First Amendment is one of the most critical amendments that we have. And so we've got to utilize it. We also have to teach young people how to utilize it in a safe way where they're not putting their liberty at risk, which oftentimes is the case, right? But don't be afraid to protest. Use it, learn about it, and do it in a way that promotes civil and human rights and towards constructive outcomes, but also be educated on it so you don't end up being victimized as a result of trying to do something right.
Oh yeah, because they're quick to victimize you. They will beat you up, no matter if it's for the right, even if you're within your rights.
And we experienced that in 2020 here, right? Post the murder of George Floyd, right? In Oklahoma City, where we were ranked the second most deadly police department in the nation for a department our size, right? You had community members who could literally relate to the pain and the suffering and the images that they saw, right, of George getting killed. And so there was trauma, there was anger, there was righteous outrage, and young people were out in the streets protesting police brutality and demanding reform. And unfortunately, because they didn't have the experience and wisdom of how to strategically plan out protests, what ended up happening is the Oklahoma City Police Department actually responded to protesters, literally had themselves a police riot, right? Was throwing out cannons and burning down trees and shooting people with rubber bullets and water hoses, and literally they were the bullies being abusive, being destructive in our city, did a bunch of property damage in the process of it, wasted a bunch of our tax dollars, and then they ended up blaming the kids, right, the young people, for being the protesters, and then we ended up watching a lot of them get prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. We saw some of them be branded as terrorists. For example, the young person I told you about, Ty Baker, photojournalist, he was just there videoing what was happening and was literally charged with some of the highest crimes, false crimes, right? His bond, I think, was millions of dollars. And you need to have his mom on sometime, Sharice Baker. She'll tell you all the details. Literally was arrested, was taken to the Oklahoma County Jail, was booked out, his charges were escalated, and then his bail was increased like millions of dollars. SWAT raids his house to arrest this kid. Has no criminal past. Has no past involving violence, right? Wasn't even involved in the actual protest. He was there working as a photojournalist. And ends up getting caught up in this whole mess. And it literally took nearly 3 years for him to be able to put the court process behind him and all of that. And he still has a lot of trauma as a result of it. So that's the thing, is protest, but also kind of learn, right, about how to do it in a safe manner so you don't end up being a victim.
Yes, because you guys don't realize when you're falsely arrested, whether you're innocent or not, guess what? It costs money. To get a lawyer, to fight the case, to prove your innocence, it costs.
And we live in a system that wants to coerce you to plead guilty whether you're innocent or not. Right? So, and that's another piece of it, right, that we got to get corrected. So, but I don't want people to be afraid of protesting, right? I just want them to be smart enough, right, to go learn about civil rights and civil disobedience and what their rights are and how you can do it in a safe manner. And then, you know, there are moral actors, right, who do that in civil disobedience regardless of the consequences, right? People that are willing to take the risk to their freedom and to their lives in many cases, right? So we have to distinguish between those folks that are willing to take the risk. But if you're a person who doesn't want to end up going to jail, who doesn't want to end up getting shot or, you know, being brutalized, you've got to learn the rules so you don't end up becoming a victim of something bigger, right? And we've done a lot of things right. I mean, we've had many marches and, you know, parades and rallies and protests and sit-in where, you know, no one was arrested, no one was harmed, and people can participate on that level. But if you really want to go all the way, right, you need to also be aware that there's some serious consequences to it.
There are. But if you are standing for something, I mean, it's going to come with consequences, because officers don't like to be told that they're doing wrong or that what they don't like to be held accountable. I'm just saying. And if you're just now tuning in, you guys, it's the Couch Chronicles, where it ain't no fucking limits. I'm trying to watch my mouth.
I think you like saying that. Hey, I'm all about free speech. You can use your free speech. I'm telling you.
You guys follow Couch Chronicles No Limits on Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts as well, Fanbase, Bigo, Tagged, and there's a new app called Likee. Make sure that you follow. I also posted it on my social media, so make sure that you follow and subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, THA Real JANELL, and visit the websites, which is THA Real JANELL and THACouch.com. Follow my guests on all social media, Sara, Bana, and you guys make sure you support her campaign. And if you don't, look into it and see why you need to. Tell them why they need to support you.
Because we are, our entire campaign, I'm running for county commissioner in Oklahoma County District 1 in order to save lives in Oklahoma County. I have worked as a civil and human rights advocate in Oklahoma County for nearly 2 decades. 15 years of that work has involved me entering into that Oklahoma County jail, which is deemed unconstitutional by the federal government. And unfortunately, the mortality rates have always been high, but since 2020 alone, we've seen an alarming increase in the mortality rates, where 54 individuals have perished. 2020 alone, since 2020 alone, okay, guys? And the mass majority of those deaths were preventable, right? And we are seeing no reform, we are seeing no transparency, no accountability, and literally the next death at the facility is statistically predictable. And so in order to save lives, we need to send someone up there that is not going to be a yes man, that is going to hold folks accountable. And the other piece of saving lives is I worked with the DOJ over the last 2 years on their investigation into the state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma County, the Department of Mental Health, Oklahoma City, and the Oklahoma City Police Department for our systemic pattern of violating Title II of the American with Disabilities Act, where we are systematically failing to provide individuals with behavioral health issues help up front through community-based mental health care, drug and alcohol treatment facilities, to be proactive and preventative. And then what we end up doing is allowing the crisis to get so bad where we then pipeline them into institutions, whether they're psychiatric facilities and county jails and Department of Corrections. And it is immoral, it is unethical, it is literally financially costly, and it is unconstitutional. So we need to reform that model. And part of my platform is, and something I've been advocating for 7 years at the county commission and the jail trust, is we need to radically reduce the county jail's population, right?
Yes.
An unconstitutional county jail that has become notorious for being the deadliest jail in America has no business in these conditions pipelining in mass numbers nonviolent indigent offenders, right? Because if they weren't poor, they weren't going to be sitting there, right? It's a debtor's jail, right? If they were rich, regardless of the types of crimes they committed, they would be able to post bail, walk out, go back to court until they're convicted or found to be innocent, right? Found to be not guilty, not innocent. So it's a jail and a facility where we are pipelining poor people, and nonviolent folk don't need to be there. And so my solutions have been ending cash bail for nonviolent indigent offenders, and Senate Bill 252 in 2019 would have achieved that across the state and would have radically reduced the county jail's population and saved Oklahoma County millions of dollars that could have been rediverted towards preventative mental health care, as well as roads and bridges and all the other things we need as far as core government functions. And one of the things I want to put out there is, one thing that distinguishes me from my opponent, one of my opponents is Representative Jason Lowe, voted in opposition to ending cash bail for nonviolent offenders. And he was one of the only urban Democrat to do so. That legislation fell by 5 votes that could have literally saved lives. And as a civil rights advocate and investigator who's actually had to investigate the death of nonviolent offenders who died in that facility since 2019, that is offensive to me, right?
Yeah.
So an individual like that, who has also endorsed building a larger $1 billion jail, which is only going to increase mass incarceration, I don't think that that's the future we want to head towards, right? I want to think about a future where we're being smart on crime, where we are being ethical and we are being financially sound and responsible. And what we know is Oklahoma historically has had one of the highest rates of incarceration. We're 4th in the nation right now, right? And there is no reason in the heartland of America, the land of the free, where we should continue mass incarceration. There are evidence-based solutions forward where we can help people and do the ethical, moral, and cost-friendly thing up front by giving them access to mental health care, drug, alcohol treatment services, housing first solutions, addressing poverty issues, and radically reduce the jail's population over the next few years, and build a smaller jail that is humane but focused on housing violent offenders in that facility.
Wow. Right, that's real. Wow. I want you to win.
Thank you.
I got you a whole sign. I told them to bring me a bigger sign because I want the world to see when they driving by that I'm supporting Sara Bana. Yes.
And she lives on a hot street. There's traffic going by. And I'm like, you want a bigger sign? We're there.
Yes. Now, did you pick District 1 or how does that work?
So I live in District 1. So I live in the heart of northeast side in Midwest City, technically. But the northeast side of the county is literally, kind of the same as you go from Oklahoma City towards east until you get to the more rural parts of the county. So 18 years I've lived there. And prior to that, so when I moved to the U.S., I actually grew up in Del City, learned English in elementary school there. And So I resided in Del City, and then met my better half, Chris, who was an Illinoisan. He was in the military, Air Force, and so we were poor. And we were really hoping to buy a home. And so we bought the first home that we came across that we could afford, and it ended up being in Midwest City. And we love it. It's our community, it's our home, it's where we feel comfortable. We love our neighbors, we love our community, and people are going to have to force me out of Midwest City before I get out. So, so that's how I ended up running for District 1. It's where I've been, it's a community that I love and cherish.
Right. Now, it seems like our tax money goes straight to the wrong pockets.
Yes.
The county government.
Yes.
Now, what can we do to hold them accountable about the money that's supposed to be spent building the community?
Yeah, so we need to stop the corruption, y'all. And people get offended when I use that word, like it's some, vulgar word. Corruption happens. Corruption happens in every government institution across the world, and corruption happens in Western democracies as well. As a matter of fact, the United States has a ranking of how often corruption happens in our county and state and local government institutions. That's why we have the state auditor, right? She literally audits accounting, and we find municipalities, towns, county governments, state institutions committing fraud and embezzlement more regularly and more often than I'd be comfortable with, right? But it's happening. And what is corruption? Corruption is fraud. It's abuse of power. It's cronyism. It's favoritism. It's nepotism, right? It's where an individual who has been delegated power from the voters is abusing that position of power for personal or political gain, right? So it's happening regularly, and unfortunately, one of the things, that's another reason I'm running, aside from saving lives, the number 2 reasons, because I started attending the county commission meetings and the jail trust meetings because of my concerns about the inhumane and unconstitutional crisis at the county jail. And while I'm attending meetings on a week-by-week basis, I'm becoming aware of the financial corruption that is happening literally week after week, right? The conflicts of interest that exist, and the waste, the government waste that exists, right, within our county government. So the county is broke, not because we're not giving them enough money, is that our county commissioners have become corrupt, and they're wasting our money, and they've turned our county government into basically their personal business to serve their campaign contributors. And so if you go through their ethics reports, what you'll find is stakeholders and special interest groups and people who want to influence the outcome of our county government, giving them the maximum allowable amount. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is, if you're paying close attention, is a lot of those same individuals are appearing on agenda items to buy this piece of land, to contract for this service. Does that make sense? And so that's corrupt. It's unethical, right? And so we need to stop that. And this practice of buying and selling our county elected officials has to be eradicated in order for us to protect and preserve the public interest, right? And that was one of my commitments. I didn't take a single penny from the tycoons and the millionaires and the billionaires who want to profiteer off this larger $1 billion jail and the other issues related to our county government. So we got to stop the corruption.
Yes, we do. And I'm down to help any way I can.
Thank you. Come protest with me.
Yes, I will. No, seriously.
I know you will.
Oh yeah. I was actually protesting before. Well, last year, at the beginning of last year, I spent my whole half of the year in a wheelchair. So it was like all those surgeries had put me back. So I wasn't able to be on the front line. But I was. Trust me. I would be there. I don't care wherever we at. Where y'all at, I'm going to be there. I'm going to meet y'all there, and I'm bringing my camera and my microphone.
And this type of protest I'm talking about really isn't even a protest. That's actually the wrong vocabulary for it. Is being civically engaged and active, right? So when I go to the county government meetings, unless there's a hot issue going on, it's usually me and maybe one other regular person there. Sometimes it's just me.
Yeah, I know Darren.
Darren
makes it there a lot.
He makes it there a lot, right? And so if citizens are engaged, then they are more aware and informed, right? And so by being aware and informed and being at the right place, when you see something that's wrong, you can speak out about it, expose it, and raise the awareness of more people, right? And the hope is that that will deter your politicians, your public servants from the misconduct.
Right. That's real. Now, hearing that another commissioner before you was the best, does it intimidate you?
No, I think it makes me want to, learn from what they did right, and make sure that I'm learning and making sure that I am also able to meet that standard.
Yes, facts.
And I've been told Commissioner Willa Johnson was one of the best commissioners this county has had, and that's based on the opinions of municipal leaders I've talked to, as well as members of the community. And you know what? She was a former city councilwoman that became county commissioner. So that's cool, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Now, you're actually the only candidate that has experience and qualifications in building roads and bridges and economic development.
Yes.
That's a badge of honor. Can you tell everyone how you got that qualification?
So it's being a city councilwoman, right? What people don't know, well, a lot of people don't know what their city government does or their county government, right? It's the most local, immediate, and intimate body is your city government, and then your county government, and then your state, and then federal, right? And so your municipal government is, responsible for maintaining and building the roads and bridges that within the jurisdiction of a municipality. They have to approve the zoning applications, and they make the ordinances that then the planning commission, right, oversees and implements, and the petitions that come before us from have to go before the planning commission, and then the council approves them. Your city council puts out the bids for advertises the bids that we have to put out for different contractual work that a municipality would have, and then we award those bids, right? We have to set elections for bonds, right? So 95% of what your typical elected municipal official does in your municipality is the labor of a county commissioner, right? The only difference is that in a county commissioner's district, instead of being over just a smaller jurisdictional ward within one municipality, you're actually overseeing multiple municipalities, right? But the work is literally what you do in that capacity, in that role of a councilwoman. There are only two duties that I don't do as a councilwoman that a county commissioner does, which is to appoint a member to the Board of Excise and the Board of Equalization. So those are the only two things that I don't currently do as a city councilwoman that a county commissioner would do. So.
Okay. Wow. I mean, you really the HBIC.
Well, not really.
Respectfully.
No, I don't mean that too. And that's the thing, y'all. Like, start local. Like, it's incredible the experience you get, and you literally watching your roads and bridges in your town get built, and businesses that come in to apply, for zoning permit because they want to start a business there and then take off ground. It's all a beautiful thing. It's building. Have you ever played Sims, right? On the computer?
Yes.
Okay. It's like Sims, but on a different level. So it's cool. It's cute.
Wow. Now, you've been a big help in being loud about the deaths that's happening in the Oklahoma County Jail.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the actual advocacy?
As far as the what we do on that. Okay, so so 15 years ago I started going into the county jail to do welfare screens, civil rights checks, and legal redress. And so I would meet with detainees that were being housed at the facility, approximately 10 to 15 of them per visit. I would go in there about 2 to 3 times a month.
Random ones?
These would be individuals who had reached out to us, right? So they were reporting some sort of a legal or civil rights concern or about the conditions. So we would go in there and we would get a private meeting with that individual in the attorney room where the attorneys meet with them to learn more about their complaint, right? As a result of it, I learned that they were literally housing children and juveniles illegally in that facility. And so my role was meeting with the juveniles and the pregnant women. And so my main job was making sure that they survived the jail experience, right? That whether they were being provided their meals, folks reporting that they're not getting access to the showers. The kids who were there were supposed to have teachers come by and give them access to education. That wasn't happening. There were kids that were being assaulted and raped in the facility. Just inhumane conditions that were literally putting their survival at risk. And so my first job was working with the sheriff and the deputies based on what the children were reporting to me to make sure we're fixing the complaints that were coming, correcting it, and making sure that they would survive that experience. But once I started working with the kids, you know, you get pulled in. You know what I mean? You can't just be like, okay, well, he's good in his cell. I'll just go on about my life. You get to know these people. You get to work with their mothers, and then you learn about their cases. And then what I learned through that process was these are poor children who had been systematically failed. Mass majority of them were victims of domestic violence, drug abuse within the home system, poverty, mental health issues. Some of them were DHS kids and, you know, kicked out of schools, right? And nobody was collecting this information about their background, which may have contributed to the situation that caused them to be there in the first place, right? And because they were poor children, they were having to go through the public defender's office, which meant none of these attorneys are coming to visit with you, right? You don't see them until you go to court. And when you do, they want to give you a plea agreement for 30 to life. And these are kids that were being charged as adults because of the nature of their crimes. And I'm not going to, like, if I believe there are facts that needs to be considered in that child's case, or maybe the child didn't pull the trigger, maybe the child isn't is innocent, I'm not going to tell that child to take a plea deal just because they're poor, right? I'm going to go find the attorney and say, have you looked into the facts of this case? Have you seen the background on this child? And what are you doing to give this child adequate representation and defense, right? And, you know, the attorneys didn't like that. And I also worked with private attorneys who are even more corrupt. I mean, literally, at least with the public defenders, you knew they'd show up to court and they would have to close out the case. The private attorney is one of the most unchecked, unprofessional professions we have. You know, we talk about police accountability. We need accountability for the officers of the court, too. You have no idea how many bar complaints I've had to file of fraudulent, corrupt, scam attorneys who basically take people are in crisis, right? Mom doesn't have a whole lot of money, but maybe she has that $5,000 because she just sold her car to help her child, right? Or she asked grandma and grandpa and 10 other people, and they'll go give this attorney money because he's an attorney, and you think you can trust them,
and then they don't even.
And they're not responding to your calls. They're not doing the adequate, you know, investigation into the cases. What they also want to do is to get you to agree to a plea deal because that's the easiest thing to do. They've made their money and move on to the next case, right? But the expectation should be is that if I'm paying for an attorney, they are going to work to protect my rights in a diligent way, right? I want to, and maybe it was my problem, but I wanted my children to have the same type of defense the millionaires and the billionaires who were being criminally charged were getting, right? And I wasn't seeing that and I wasn't getting that. So I would go after the attorneys and get them to cooperate in a way where they were doing an ethical, right, and a diligent job. And honestly, we were pretty successful. So what would end up happening is working with them, I would build the case files, you know, put pressure on them, bring the moms, build a coalition that would attend court for them. What we would end up doing is redirect those kids from being certified as adults to be prosecuted in the adult criminal justice system and redirect them to the juvenile justice system, where instead of looking at doing 30 to life, they would be aging out at 18 to 21 if their behavior was good while they were in custody. And there were a few cases we were able to get charges dismissed, you know, or we're able to get the kid out and get them the adequate help they needed. Now I've had kids charged with terrorism. You know, 15-year-old boy having a mental health situation, wrote something in a piece of paper, and then, you know, people freaked out and, you know, wanted to brand him a terrorist. Now, was he a terrorist? No. Was he at risk? Yes. Were we adequately responding by throwing him in a cell? No, right? So it was situations like that, or I had kids that, you know, they went to break in to steal some weed or some money because somebody told them it was there. Yeah. And they go in there and the property owner shows up and they have a weapon and then a fight breaks out between the 4 juveniles and the homeowner. And one of the kids who ends up with the gun ends up shooting the homeowner, right? And then all 4 kids are getting charged with felony murder. And unfortunately, what they would do is they would offer plea deals, right? And so the older kids, right, who may have had a few rodeos would plea deal for a shorter sentence, right? 5, 10, 15 years, right? And then so what they would want to do is come after my 14, 15-year-old kid, right, for the 30 to life, and say, well, I'm going to have your friend and your other friend testify against you, right? That's rigged, right? I don't want that outcome. I want the truth. And I've done victims advocacy too. I've helped domestic violence victims, gun violence victims, police brutality victims. The victims of crime just don't want to throw people in jail. They want to hold the person who harmed them accountable, right? And so the system needs to be efficient and effective and have integrity in finding out the truth behind these matters. It's not Burger King, right, where you go through and you just want your burger, and the more burgers you make, the better it is.
Right.
It's a caseload, but you need to make sure what you're producing is based on facts, truth, evidence, and going through a procedural way where everyone's rights are protected. Sorry.
You're good. That's real shit. I mean, because I'm going through the same thing right now. They allow somebody, because she was in the Army. She's an Army vet. Yeah. And I'm a past convicted felon, but February 12th will make my 8th year being out. Yeah. I've literally been doing things to help the community, help my people that's been locked up, and it's like none of that matters. Yeah, they don't care. It's not about the truth. It's not about the facts. It's not about the evidence. It's about closing cases, doing it faster. It really is a business industry. You have to understand. Every time a person goes to jail, there is money to be made from it's a Ponzi scheme. That's what
housing.
I've been saying.
Yes, there's a public defender that's getting paid because that's an additional case, right? There's a district attorney whose budget is, increasing, right? So the more cases and the more they process and pipeline through the system, the more money. And I'm not opposed to the system, but we need to make sure the system has ethics and integrity in the process. It's not just about prosecuting people and closing cases just to do it. We need to make sure we're getting the perpetrator of a crime based on forensic evidence, right? And we're not playing these tactics, right, of where we're falsifying things or we're turning people against each other to falsify and then even with the sentencing, yes, we've got to comply with what state statute says, but we also need to get smart on how do we rehabilitate, right? Is it just about punishment, or is it also about rehabilitation? Right.
And don't just say going to prison is rehabilitation, because it's not. Yeah. I've done it. Yeah. Now, I have a few more questions if you still got time. Yes. All right.
Sorry, I talk a lot.
Girl, that was good. You see, I just wanted to make sure that I had enough questions.
I love you. Thank you.
Now, you're actually the one who filed an ethics complaint against Commissioner Miles Davison.
Yes.
That was huge of you. Can you tell us how you figured it out?
Okay, so because I'm a public interest advocate and I do government anti-corruption, as soon as I become suspicious over financial matters, right, I start looking into to connect the dots. That's how you connect corruption and conspiracy, right? So you have to look into the financial records and the monetary exchanges that are being made, right? Because corruption, it's not like you're an elected official and I need you to pass a contract, you do, and I come and say, give me my $1,000. It doesn't happen like that, right? The favors are being exchanged underhand and sometimes through third parties, right? So maybe you're a county commissioner and I need you to pass $1 million contract for me to get rich. And so instead I give your brother a, 6 times salary, right, working for me, right? So you got to connect those dots. And so I started looking through the ethics reports, and I'm very studious of those to see who's giving who money, right, and who are these individuals, and how, if they're in any way connected to the business that's going on at our county government. And so his weren't filed. He had literally not filed them for over a year. And he was doing fundraisers. As a matter of fact, one fundraiser was being hosted at Flintco, the company that is now contracted with to build the larger $1 billion jail. This is like going to end up being multi-million-dollar contract, right? Flintco, that company, was hosting this commissioner a fundraiser, right? So we called that out because it sounded like a conflict of interest, and then they pretended it was a misunderstanding, and then they changed the venue of the thing. And then so I went to a couple of his fundraisers, and I knew he was actively receiving money, but he wasn't reporting them the way he's supposed to, right? And so I filed a complaint on that, and then Basically, he was busted on not filing and complying with the requirements. And then he filed them. And then once he filed them, we realized he was receiving more than the allowable amount for the cycle. So that was the issue. And then the other piece was there was conflicts of interest that existed between the money he's getting. And unfortunately, the state of Oklahoma and career politicians, right, don't want to update the statutes to prohibit that type of conflict of interest, right? It's unethical. We know that. It's not healthy for government, but no one in the state legislature is saying, let's close the gap so our politicians aren't exploiting their power, right, for personal and political interest, right? And why don't they want to do it? Because they want to have their campaigns funded in this manner, right? They got to stay competitive. They want money, and they're not going to change the rules that are going to impact their political careers, right? So that's what happened there. I really think we need an investigation into that particular commissioner, but we need better laws too.
Yes, we definitely do. Like I said, I got 3 more questions. Yes. How do you feel about the way ICE agents are collecting illegal immigrants?
As a immigrant, that really touches me. As a matter of fact, I was one of the protesters that joined Dream Action Oklahoma and United We Dream when they were trying to separate the kids and bring them to Fort Sill a few years ago at the camps. And we were able to stop the feds from doing that. That was during the past Trump presidency. I just think all human beings have dignity. I think this is a country of immigrants. Everyone that's been here, aside from the Native Americans, are immigrants to this country. They have contributed so much to the industry, to the economy, to the everything, infrastructure, to the culture of this country. And the biggest thing is if you've committed violent crimes, I know there needs to be accountability for that. And the law actually has that in place, right? Because if you go to the county jail and you're a violent offender and you're undocumented, they're not supposed to release you. ICE is supposed to come pick you up. You get an ICE hold, right? But targeting in this systemic way to go after undocumented people simply because they are here and they don't have documentation is immoral, it's unethical, and I just don't think it even makes financial sense, right? I think what we've needed to do in this nation for a very long time is update our immigration and naturalization process so that we can legally process people in a way we know who they are, why they're here, give them that right to get a driver's license, to get that employment, and be able to pay taxes and build here. And many of the undocumented folks are paying taxes. They are contributing to our economy. So I'm opposed to the systemic pipelining of, folk. And I am particularly for the children, because I was a child when I came here. And the other day I was at a meeting, and a very nice Republican woman asked me, she goes, well, they're criminals. And I said, they're children.
Right.
Their parents decided to come across the border. This child has no conception of law, right? To brand a child as a criminal simply, you know what I mean, because their parents were seeking shelter, refuge, and safety. I don't even think that's conservative values. I mean, I don't know what's happening. I mean, I used to know a conservative party that was all about Christianity and Jesus and helping our brothers and sisters. And so I don't know what's going on right now. Maybe this Trump culture, but there's got to be a better way forward. But this isn't humane. What's happening?
Definitely. And one of my last questions are: I speak a lot about holding people accountable for their fuck ups.
Yeah.
Have you ever held somebody accountable and it offended them or?
Is what I do. This is public interest government anti-corruption is what I do. And I don't think either one of my opponents have actually ever done that type of work. I've literally, like the whole Commissioner Miles thing. Other people were aware.
Yeah,
None
they
of
just
them,
wouldn't hold. Yeah,
they weren't going to go file an ethics report because there's a retaliation and they don't want to be that guy, right? And my colleagues at the Midwest City Council will tell you, like, I'm fierce. I don't bullshit. on these things, right? Because I literally believe that our elected officials should be held to the highest standard, and our institutions should have integrity. I've gone after presidents of universities in a public way. I was actually upskirted by the executive aide to the governor, you know, and I was told most women probably wouldn't have even reported it, knowing who he was. But you're not going to violate me, because if I allow you to violate me in a government building, that means you have no respect for the next woman, and the next woman may not have, right, the protections and the safety and the privileges I do. You're not going to get away with that. I don't care who you are, right? But I have a legacy of holding elected officials accountable and institutions accountable. So with the Oklahoma City Police Department, when we protested post the murder of George Floyd, and I tried to negotiate with Chief Gorley, you need to recognize that having your officers respond to protests, peaceful protests of don't do police brutality, and your police officers coming and having basically creating the first having a police riot, which then created a race riot in our town, right, is not the appropriate response. And you say, yes, it is. I will use all force necessary to clear out protesters. Then I know you got a cultural problem, right? And so then I told them, I'm going to go above you, man. I'm going to call the DOJ. I'm going to file complaints because this is not okay, right? So I've done it. I'll do it, and I have no fear of doing it. And we need people to do it, because if not, our government institutions will have no integrity, and they will therefore not serve people, right? They'll serve the people who are running them.
Right. That's true.
And the other last thing is, y'all, elected officials and people are power no different than you and I. They're just regular people, right? And so if we are expected to comply with rules, regulations, and the laws,
everybody else should.
Everybody else should as well.
No matter who you are. Yeah. Now, my very last question, I know I said it, the other one was, but my very last question is, have you ever lost anyone behind your political views and beliefs?
Lost anyone in what
like,
sense?
as far as, I made a post the other day purposely just to see what somebody was going to say, or if anybody was too into my political, you know, views, you know, if you...
You mean friends, allies?
Just people, like family, friends. Like, I've had a family member tell me that they're not cool with me because I didn't vote for Trump.
Yeah. No, I've and that's the nature of the work that I do, and I've had to get accustomed to that nearly 15 years ago.
Right.
When you hold people in power, there's going to be retaliation. There's going to be people that get upset with you. You know, we talked about that. I actually have a friend who's like a father figure to me. And I've loved him forever. He's been very supportive of me, and literally had to hold him accountable publicly. And you know, that created some tensions. But just because you're my friend doesn't mean you get a pass.
Right.
You know, and a lot of people, honestly, like, you know, like, people have said this to me, is like, we're friends. Where's your loyalty? You know,
like, it's not about loyalty.
Exactly.
When you're literally not being a genuine good person, when you're literally doing something fucked up and thinking that because of my loyalty that I just have to just sweep that under the rug, then when is somebody gonna start cleaning under the rug? Because it's always gonna be dirty under there if everybody keeps sweeping stuff under it.
And that's the problem. That's the culture. We expect the loyalty, and particularly in government, right? We become friends, we have to work together, and so the expectation is, because of these associations, you don't, you know, disturb the water, you stay loyal, you don't call each other out, and if I don't call you out, then you'll show me the same decency and you won't call me out, and so things go on unchecked all the time until people start dying, like the county jail, but you know, we'll be polite about it. That's not constructive.
Right.
You know, I think it's very dangerous to operate that way. And there aren't that many people that are like me, that are willing to do the things that I will do, but public interest and government accountability is huge to me, and I realize I'm going to lose friends over it. And I have some people, I have some haters. Now, people want to kill me because of, you know, and I get it, you know, I get it, you know. I have to put myself in their shoe. You know, I have to imagine when I went after Miles Davidson, you know, somebody told me, you know, his wife was in the hospital, you know, he was hiding from the media.
What does that got to do with him being
Yeah,
this is the thing, and I just said this the other day on the couch, is the reason why we don't have real black leaders in position of leadership is because no one wants to show their skeletons in their closet. No one wants to show that they got a lot of stuff hidden and swept under the rug.
Yeah. But I mean, what I mean with that is it makes me feel bad, right? Because I mean, when I go after someone, right? I feel I've gone after people because I mean I've gone after killer cops. I've gone after folks who've killed people, right? I've seen them go to jail, and while I'm there and happy that the victim got some sense of justice, a part of my heart also breaks for this person that I was hunting down, that I was helping build a case against, right? I don't like to watch the suffering of other people. Like, even with career politicians that I've gone after, it gives me no satisfaction to see their demise. Does that make sense? I imagine what it's like going home after they were just exposed for something really bad on TV, and, maybe there's an investigation into them and what that means for their family life. But I don't have the privilege to have, to give mercy in one situation. I just have to be consistent and have a standard. And regardless of who you are, if there is wrong and I'm aware of it, I have to report it and I have to hold you accountable. And I feel terrible about it, but that's my work.
Yes, it just is. It is, and I love you for it.
I love you too. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
you so much for coming to the couch. Yes, anytime.
Amazing. I'll come back and kick it
Yes,
with you.
please do. You guys make sure that you support my girl Sara Bana on all social media. If you have a business and you would like to support her and put her sign out in front of your business, please make sure to contact her and her team.
Yes.
Yes,
because Oklahoma City's brutal. They'll take your sign.
Yeah, they're not gonna take mine.
Yeah,
they know better than to come in my yard.
This is true. It's private property, so you're good. Much love, you guys. February 11th is the elections. Early vote is February 6th and the 7th. Follow us on Sara, our Facebook page. You've shared it. SaraBana.com for more information. And my cell phone directly is 405-537-4955.
Period. Y'all, it's the Couch Chronicles, where it ain't no fucking limits. I will see you guys tonight at 8 Central Time. Let me go charge my phone up because I'm going to see y'all in a little bit. Love y'all. Spotify, Pandora, Apple, thank you so much for tuning in. It's the Couch Chronicles, where it ain't no fucking limits.